Let's now create our Stripe webhook so that when a successful payment occurs on Stripe's hosted page, we can get event data sent to Raydian and save it into our database. Right, so just to confirm that we have in our backend, we have our workflow and we have our Stripe webhook. Now it's going to need a signature, and that's what we're going to create soon. Let's jump into Stripe, and that's what we're going to create soon. Now, before we jump into Stripe, we need to talk about these different environments because we're currently in the dev environment, and this is basically a branch. We also have the main branch, and the main branch is connected to its own independent database, and that's where your live users live. But the dev branch also has a database for our test data. This is where we get to build our app and make mistakes, okay? Now, our dev branch also gets a URL, a fixed URL. Let me explain. At the moment, from the canvas, we can preview our app with this icon here. And when we preview our app, it's showing us a live view of our existing work that we've done. So as we do work to our app, we are previewing that work straight away. Whereas when we deploy a testing URL, we're deploying all of the current changes to a fixed URL for that moment in time. So then when we carry on development work, that URL is not affected and that deployment remains where it is. Okay. Now we need this testing URL, a fixed URL that doesn't change, to be able to use webhooks because Stripe needs to understand where it can send us this data. So can't send it to our preview URL that we're looking at now, has to go to our dev testing URL. I wanted to draw your attention to the different environments and this diagram. So at the moment, we're busy working on staging. And this is basically known as the preview branch, okay? This is just for live dev work. We've got BR, which means branch. Then we've got just this random set of characters, which makes our preview branch unique. Now, we don't use the preview for anything related to webhooks or endpoints. For that, we need something more permanent. So when we create a testing URL on the dev branch, it's going to give us a permanent link that we can use for external services. So in this instance, the randomly generated ID, which now becomes a permanent ID for this app, it's called permanent olive mongoose. Yours could be called any three random words here. But the important thing to note here is the /dev. That represents the dev branch. Now, the only difference between dev and main is the one that your customers will use, is that the dev has been removed. So this is permanent olive mongoose.apps.radian.dev. Now, this is known as a subdomain. This is also known as a subdomain, and this is your custom domain. So your custom domain is basically linked to this main branch subdomain. When it comes to webhooks, you'll need to add both, okay? One for testing, a webhook for testing that goes to the dev, and a webhook for main. You don't have to use your custom domain for Stripe webhooks. You can just use this one here. Okay, so this is actually what we want to copy because we are busy doing development work. And I'm going to copy this and then use this in the Stripe webhook. But later on, when I deploy to main, I need to go back into Stripe and make sure that I set up a second webhook or just replace this dev one. I suggest using both so you can point one to your testing database and one to your live database. So back in the app, I'm going to click on dev and I'm going to click on dev branch, update testing URL. So this deploys the current state of the app to this URL. Okay, and I'm going to open that URL. Here I am on the courses and I've gone ahead and copied that URL. Now, back in Stripe, we're going to go down to developers in our sandbox for now because it's test data. We're going to create a webhook. We're going to add a destination. So where does Stripe send payment data to? It's going to send it to the URL we've just copied. There's a bit more to add to that URL. Okay, so now which events? And I need to remind myself of this. So I'm just going to go back to the chat and I'm going to say, let me know which Stripe webhook events to add and the destination. Okay, here we go. So I've already copied this part to domain, and then I need to add API, workflows, Stripe webhooks. Now, in terms of the events, here they are here. So I need to add these. Okay. So let's do checkout session completed. And then we need to do payment intent succeeded. We need to do payment intent payment failed. That one there. And then optional ones is charge refunded. We're going to leave that. Customer subscription deleted. Maybe we should add that one. Okay, continue. And then webhook endpoint, continue. This is going to be called Compass, the name of my app. And here is the endpoint. Okay, so this is the endpoint, sorry. This is the dev testing URL. And then it needs to be /API, /workflows, and then the name of that backend workflow, Stripe webhook. Let's confirm. So /API, /workflow, /Stripe webhook. And that's because our webhook is here, Stripe webhook, living in workflows. All right, guys, getting there. So we've got the destination name and we've got the endpoint URL and we've added the events. So all of that rich payment data and customer data is going to be sent to this URL, which is how Stripe communicates server to server with Raydian on the back end. I'm going to click Create Destination. And now that we've done that, we can get our signing secret. I'm going to reveal that and I'm going to copy it. And then I'm going to create a new one after the break. So we need to now add the secret to our app secrets here, webhook secret. Okay, I was testing earlier, so I have a different one. I'm going to paste in this new one. Update secret. Great. So we've got our Stripe secret key and our webhook secret. So those are all of the steps required to set up that endpoint. Fantastic. Okay, almost ready to test, but we need to create a new learner role. We need to create a new user with the role learner. So I'll see you in the next lesson.